What is going on, football fans? I am back at it with another video, and in this video I am going to go over who is the greatest quarterback from one of the greatest quarterback draft classes in NFL history, the 2004 NFL draft class. And what inspired me to make this video, of course, it is the draft class in which Eli Manning was drafted, who is my favorite player of all time. But this is really a debate I've had throughout my life with Giants fans, with football fans, and I think it's a very interesting topic, and I'd like to do more videos like this in the future. So if there are any suggestions after this, please put them in the comments below, but let's jump right into it. Now, when you think about the greatest quarterback draft classes of all time, you have the 1983 and you have the 2004. Those are the two greatest ever. Most people would tell you the 1983 is number one, of course, with Dan Marino, John Elway, and Jim Kelly. Those three combined to make, I believe, 11 Super Bowl appearances. Kelly made 4 by himself. Elway won 2. And Marino, most people would tell you, has the greatest arm of any quarterback who's ever played the position. So just a great class in 83. But 2004 is nothing to sneeze at with Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Ben Roethlisberger. All three of these guys are headed to Canton, Ohio, in my opinion, and all three of them have had fantastic careers. All of them have their strengths. All of them have their weaknesses. You can argue in certain aspects that all of them are the best. It depends on how you view a quarterback. If you go strictly by stats, you may go Phillip Rivers. If you go by toughness and grittiness and leadership, you might go Ben Roethlisberger. Or if you go by clutchness, you might go Eli Manning. And that is what is so interesting about this topic. But all three of these guys are great quarterbacks. Of course, on draft night, the San Diego Chargers, now the LA Chargers, had the number 1 overall selection, in which they selected Eli Manning. Then we all remember Eli Manning forced his way over to the New York Giants. Him and his father said he wouldn't play for the Chargers, which forced the Chargers to trade him for Phillip Rivers, who the Giants selected with the 4th pick. However, some people may not know, the Giants had Ben Roethlisberger as their second-ranked quarterback. Had that trade not been presented to them, Roethlisberger would have went 4th to the Giants, and the Steelers more than likely would have ended up with Rivers. So that trade changed the course of history, and who knows what would have happened if Eli ended up with the Chargers, if Rivers ended up with the Steelers, and Ben ended up with the Giants. We will never know. In my opinion, I think it worked out for all the teams. But we're going to jump right into it now, and we're going to get into their career accomplishments. Phillip Rivers, we'll start with, was technically the number 1 pick. He, of course, was then traded to the Chargers from the Giants when the Giants selected him at 4. He started as a backup behind Drew Brees' rookie year. What a great guy to learn behind. And Rivers, throughout his career, extremely durable quarterback and extremely consistent. That is the best way to describe Phillip Rivers. Rivers, to me, compared to these other two quarterbacks, and Ben's pretty damn consistent, but he definitely had a little bit of a stretch there before Haley came, where I think he dropped out of the top 10. Rivers, for the most part, throughout his entire career, I think was a top 10 quarterback in this league every single year. Now, can some of that be due to the fact that he had a great support system and he played in sunny California? Do I think that helped his statistic? Yes, and we're going to get into why I believe that. And I don't necessarily know if Rivers would have been nearly as successful in New York, but he was in a great situation in San Diego, and he thrived. For his career, he had 118 and 90 career mark, 28 games over 500, so he proves he's a winning quarterback. He's an 8-time Pro Bowler, which, as we said earlier, he was very consistent, which explains why he made 8 Pro Bowls in 15 seasons. He had a 7.8 yards per attempt, which is a very high mark, and it matches Ben. Eli's much lower than those two in that department with a 7 yards per attempt. He had 26 career fourth-quarter comebacks, which ranks 3rd among these quarterbacks by a wide stretch, but we'll get into that when we get to the other two. He had 374 career touchdowns and 178 career interceptions. Great numbers, and it is the best disparity amongst these 3 Titans. Now, when I think Phillip Rivers, I think of a guy, like I said, very consistent, great regular season quarterbacks, puts up those great numbers, benefited from the warm weather. When it gets cold in the playoffs, you take a look at his numbers and he shrinks. In the regular season, he has a career 64.5% completion. In the playoffs, he has a 59.4 completion percentage. That's not just bad. That's bad. That's not even mediocre, in my opinion. A sub 60% in the playoffs with a 5-6 career record and 14 touchdowns and 10 interceptions and just 1 game-winning drive. Now, it is a much smaller sample size. He, of course, played over 200 regular season games. Very consistent, very durable. But in that 11-game sample size, he's a much different quarterback. And he's a guy that could never get past Tom Brady. And I don't want to hear the excuse that he never had the best team, because in 2006, he did. They went 14-2 with Schottenheimer. He was at home, and he couldn't get the win. But I cannot knock Phillip Rivers. I cannot knock anybody that thinks he's the best quarterback of these three. But the fact that he couldn't get it done in the postseason, to me, I wouldn't have him at the top. Nonetheless, he is headed to Canton, Ohio, and he is probably the greatest quarterback in Chargers history. You could make the argument that him or Dan Fouts, and you can make the argument with all three of these quarterbacks in terms of whether or not they're the greatest in their franchise. Of course, Big Ben has Terry Bradshaw, who won 4 Super Bowls. But me personally, I'd probably have Big Ben at number 1, and the same could be said for the Giants with Phil Simms and Eli Manning. I think most people would have Eli Manning at number 1, which is crazy when you think about it. These 3 historical franchises, the Giants and Steelers in particular, 2 of the top 5 or 6 most historical franchises ever, got their greatest quarterback in their franchise's history, arguably, from the 2004 draft class. What a class this was, and that is going to bring us to Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger is a winner, for lack of a better word. You look at his career record, 144-69. Now, I didn't look into it, but I would imagine that is one of the greatest winning percentages of all time for a quarterback. Now, of course, he had great surrounding talent, no doubt about it. He had a great defense with LeBeau. He had great weapons, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Santonio Holmes. You go down the list, Le'Veon Bell certainly helped him out. However, he played in the elements. He played great. He always toughed it out and played hurt. Now, I will say, a negative to Ben's game is the way that he extended plays. It was great in the sense that it developed big plays, but it was bad in the sense that he took sacks, which explains his 6.5% sacks percentage, which is by far the highest on this list, which led to more injuries. Rivers had a 5.5%, Eli had a 4.8%. That is a big difference. And Ben, because of that, only played 4 complete seasons in his 15-year career. That is right. He only played a full 16-game season 4 times. But nonetheless, a winner, a great quarterback, a 6-time Pro Bowler. He did, however, lead the league in interceptions twice, something we all know Eli Manning is not allergic to, in which I believe he did it 3 times. Now, leading the league in interceptions, yeah, you don't want to do that, but that doesn't always necessarily mean he's a bad quarterback. A lot of times, to me, that means that this guy's a gunslinger, and he's going to take shots when he feels they need to be taken. And sometimes it results in interceptions. A perfect example of a guy like that is Brett Favre. But Ben Roethlisberger, great quarterback. When it gets to the postseason, he shrinks a little bit. He's still a very good quarterback historically, a 13-8 record. He has 2 Super Bowl wins. Now, of course, his first one came in his second year, where I think he was carried. He played horrible in that Super Bowl, but you can't take it away from him. He got a ring, and then in the second one, he played great. We all remember that game-winning drive against the Arizona Cardinals, Larry Fitzgerald and Kurt Warner-led team, where he hit Santonio Holmes in the corner of the end zone. He has a 62.4% completion. 30 touchdowns and 24 picks is not that good, but 4 game-winning drives and 3 fourth-quarter comebacks. Overall, Ben Roethlisberger, great quarterback. He is headed to Canton, Ohio. The only knocks you could really say about this guy is his durability and his leadership off the field. Of course, with the rape allegations, he got into it a little bit with Antonio Brown. So if you're going to nitpick, you could say that. But in terms of winning football games, he's up there with just about anybody. The Steelers have been as consistent as any team since he's entered the league. I believe they've only had 1 losing season since he's been there. The next guy we're going to get to is, of course, my guy, Eli Manning of the New York Giants. When you look at regular season statistics, if you're just a stat guy, Eli's third on your list, because he doesn't measure up statistically. He's 116 and 114. He's only 2 games over 500. Now, some factors need to be taken into account. You cannot just look at a record. You have to take into account that Eli Manning, up until about the 2012 season, was probably damn near close to on par with these guys in terms of win-loss percentage, and it was because the Giants surrounded him with the pieces he needed. After that, Jerry Reese drafted horribly, and his record suffered mightily because of it. Not saying that Eli doesn't deserve some of the blame. He certainly does, but the Giants did a horrible job of giving this man talent, where the Chargers and Steelers from that span, the last 7 or 8 years or so, did a much better job, which is why Rivers and Roethlisberger did not fall off a cliff. Had we had this debate 6 or 7 years ago, to me it wouldn't have been a debate. Eli Manning would have been number 1. But because Eli Manning did not finish his career, even though none of these guys' careers are over yet, Eli could still win a Super Bowl this year, so could Ben, so could Rivers. But up to this point, because Eli Manning slipped his last 6 or 7 years, there's certainly a debate, and Eli Manning may not be number 1 on my list. But when you look at his record, like I said, just over 500, 360 touchdowns, 239 interceptions. Now, Eli Manning, in terms of touchdowns, is only 3 behind Big Ben, so we'll say that's about even. But he has 49. We'll round up and say 50 more interceptions, which is huge. Big number there. He only averaged 7 yards per attempt, which is nearly a yard less for his career than the other two quarterbacks who averaged 7.8. He made 4 Pro Bowls. He had a 60.3 completion percentage, which is about 4 percentage points lower than Ben and Rivers. And one thing I will say, though, he has 37 career game-winning drives, which ranks 9th all-time. Ben, we said, was 6th all-time with 42. Rivers only had 26. Eli is the king of durability. He played in 210 straight games, and it still would have been going if it was not for Ben McAdoo. It would have been right around 230 games to this point. The record is held by Brett Favre at about 280. But nonetheless, Eli Manning, 2nd all-time in consecutive games played. And to me, that is a very overlooked attribute for an NFL quarterback. What is more important than to know that your guy's going to be out there every single Sunday? And for Ben Roethlisberger, for sure, you could not say that. He only completed 4 full seasons. So that is one point where Eli certainly gets a leg up over Ben Roethlisberger. You're talking about the most durable against one of the least durable over the last 15 years. And then when it came to the playoffs, where Ben, in my opinion, got slightly worse in postseason compared to regular season, and Rivers got significantly worse, Eli Manning got significantly better, and against top-tier competition, and on the road. How does it add up? Eli Manning's career record on the road in the playoffs, in which he was an underdog in every one of these games, is 7-2. He took down quarterbacks the likes of Brett Favre on the road, Aaron Rodgers on the road, Tom Brady twice in neutral fields, Matt Ryan on the road. I mean, he took down some great quarterbacks in the postseason, and he played great in those games. He definitely takes a step up in the playoffs. He, of course, is a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. And in only 12 playoff career games, he has 5 game-winning drives and 4 fourth-quarter comebacks. They only won 8 games. 5 of them, he had a game-winning drive in. 2 of them were in the Super Bowl. He, of course, is responsible for some of the most iconic game-winning drives in NFL history. The Super Bowls against the Patriots, both of them probably 2 of the top 4 or 5 drives ever in the history of the sport. So when it comes to clutchness, Eli Manning definitely gets a leg up over these two. And that is it. That is the summary of these 3 individuals. Rivers, if you go strictly by stats, you don't look at rings, you don't look at the clutch factor, you don't look at the fact that he played in sunny California, is probably number 1. He has the best touchdown to interception disparity. He made the most Pro Bowls. He was the most consistent in the regular season. If you just look at stats, if you're a stat head, if you're a fantasy football guy, Rivers is your guy. If you look at toughness, if you look at grittiness, and you look at postseason accomplishments and consistency, not that he was as consistent as Rivers because he got hurt a lot, but total package, I think Ben is your guy. And if you're a guy that focuses on leadership, on durability, and on clutchness, Eli Manning's your guy. Eli Manning, one of the best quarterbacks ever in the 2-minute drill and in the playoffs. I would take him over. If you were to tell me 2 minutes to go in the Super Bowl, who do you want behind center? Eli Manning would be damn near the top of my list. But I'm not going to just look at that. I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be objective. Rivers, for sure, on this list, even though he is definitely headed to the Hall of Fame, great quarterback, is number 3 for me. I would have PHILLIP Rivers at 3 because of the fact that he shrank in the playoffs. He shrank in big spots. We saw his numbers. His completion percentage dropped by 5% in the postseason, and he never got it done in the playoffs, and he had opportunities. That 14-2 Charger team was a team that was the best team in the league that year, and he couldn't get it done. Eli Manning, for example, his 2 Super Bowl runs, he was not even close to the best team in the league. He was a wild card team in one of them, and they barely snuck into the playoffs. So when you look at that, I gotta have Rivers at number 3. Number 2 and 1 is tough for me. And like I said, if you would have asked me this 5 or 6 years ago, Eli would be number 1 for me. However, because Ben, since Haley has gotten there, since Antonio Brown took off over the last 6 or 7 years or so, even though Haley's not there anymore, because Ben kind of got better over these last 6 or 7 years statistically as a regular season quarterback, and Eli Manning, of course, started the downslope of his career, I have to have Ben at number 1. They both have 2 Super Bowls. Ben, although he does not have as many clutch moments, and he did not overcome as much adversity in the playoffs as Eli Manning did, he still has 2 Super Bowl rings, and he does have an iconic drive. And overall, throughout his career, he has been more consistent than Eli Manning. When you look at the wins, 114 and 69 compared to 116 and 114, you have to give it to Ben Roethlisberger. 6 Pro Bowls to 4. I will have Ben at number 1 and Eli right in the middle at number 2. Now, of course, I hope Eli Manning goes out there this year, wins us a 3rd Super Bowl, and we could put him at number 1. But however you guys want to have it, I'm curious to get your takes in the comments below. Why would you have Eli 1 if you have him there? Why would you have Ben or Rivers 1? Tell me. Tell me your thoughts, and tell me, like I said before the video started, if you guys would like to see anything like this in the future in terms of football content, debates, drafts, whatever, let me know. Give me some suggestions. And as always, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.